Now that we've talked a little bit about the negative move and the forward or positive move, as well as the stride, and how they can set us up to get to the launch position, as well as creating stretch and tension, the thing we want to talk about now is the actual load. Now, the load is going to take place in and around the same time as the negative move through the positive move to set us up into the launch position. And as we've looked at in the videos before, some athletes or hitters have different types of negative and forward moves. We want to make sure they're not negatively affecting the swing. And it's important to understand how they correspond with the load. Sometimes that negative move can be part of the load. Sometimes the negative move is almost absent with the lower body and only in the upper body. But we want to talk a little bit about how the load is important to the swing. When we swing, and in other series of the videos that we're going to be doing, we'll talk about the sequence of the swing. The sequence of the swing should be pelvis first, then the chest or torso, then the arms and hands, and then the bat. When we load, it needs to basically be the same way, especially with younger hitters. Older hitters or hitters that are extremely strong and have a really good kinesthetic stance and have good proprioception of the upper body and lower body and how they work might be able to get away with loading a little bit differently. But the younger, weaker hitters are going to be better off separating their load. So we load with the pelvis first, then we load with the upper body or the hands. We're going to go through some different hitters here and how they load. Here we have Adrian Gonzalez, and I want you to watch here. He has a little bit of a negative move or a rock back. And as he does that, he moves his hands, almost fighting or resisting the urge to load his hands or upper body. Then as he moves forward, he loads his hands. So it's a two-step, what I like to call a two-step load. Now, we'll jog it back. And as he does his negative move, you'll see his hands move back with his body. And as he's doing this, as he lifts his leg, he's loading or coiling his hips. So you'll see his hips move in that direction. You'll see his belt buckle turn away from the pitcher right there, and he's loaded. Now, his belt buckle's going this way, and you'll see his butt kind of turn the other way. So he's showing his back pocket to the pitcher. And now he's fully loaded, and as he moves forward, now he loads the upper body. So you'll see the difference. He's loading his hips now, and then as he starts, so his hips are loaded that way, and then as he starts to move forward, now his upper body is loading, and he's loading his scap, and he's holding that as his hips are starting to move and open up the other way, there. And as he gets into the launch position, he's got the stretch that we've talked about in the picture of Mookie Betts in a previous slide, and he's ready to unload on the ball. So just to show you that again, with Adrian Gonzalez, he rocks back, negative move here, loading his hips. Now as he moves forward, he's got his upper body loaded, he holds it, now he's in launch position. The next player, okay, Tree Turner from the Nationals. He's got a little bit of a rock, and there he goes. So we'll jog that back again, and you'll see some of the same concepts. He's got a back negative move, getting into his back leg, his back heel. Right now he's into his hip, and you can see his hip starting to turn back. As he moves forward, now you'll see his hands or upper body load there, and now you'll start to see his hips start working that way, and then his hands come through. Our third hitter, Babe Ruth, the great Babe Ruth, very little negative move. You'll notice it's a big forward move with his lower body, and then he goes. Now, it's interesting here, that back heel really digs into the ground. He's creating a lot of forward momentum, and you can see the hips turn back. And you can see the hands kind of cock. He's got a little bit of a bat tip. And then he pulls them back and loads the hands as his hips are unloading. So he's got a Big forward move with the lower body. Now the hands move back as the hips are unloading. He's in launch, and then he comes through. Justin Turner with a different view here. He's coiled and loaded here, and you can see his butt right there. So he's basically pushing his back butt cheek around into the third base dugout. As he starts to move forward, his hips start to unload. His hands are back. Now he's in his launch position. His hips are leading the way. Juan Soto, he's got a rock back. You can see his hips. He's really into that back hip. He's using that back heel to really get into his back hip. Turns the hips in. Now his hands are starting to pull back. He resists, and you can see his launch really starting with that back knee. And he's resisting a little bit with his upper body, and then he comes through. Cody Bellinger is another one. Big forward move with the lower body. He starts very narrow. His hands are going to pull back as he moves forward, and he's loading, and now his hips are starting to unload. So he kind of turns his hips and his upper body at the same time, but he resists that with the upper body as his hips lead. Younger, weaker players have a hard time with that. That's why it's important to maybe do a two-step load where we're loading the hips, moving forward, then loading the upper body. Now we've got a female athlete here, Sam Show. She's got a little bit of a toe tap. You can see her hips cocking and then uncocking. So the hips cock in. She's got them kind of cocked right there. She's getting into the back hip. As the hips unload, you can see the hands pull back. Okay, so it's a two-step load there now. The hands are really creating, the upper body's creating tension against the hips unloading. So in this position, she's already turned back with her hips. And as they start to unload here, you can see the upper body turning back that way. And the hips are open, and then she comes through and finishes her swing. See how that works against each other there? You can see the hips unloading. They're already loaded. They unload. That's when the upper body loads, and she pulls through. Very quiet swing, no leg kick, very little stride. Now, this illustration, this picture of Chris Davis here is really cool because you can see his hips starting to open, and you can see his upper body turned in. And I like this because I like being able to look at the elbow there. He's really got that scap loaded. So if we had another view of this picture, you would see that the numbers are facing the pitcher, the hips starting to unload, and he's got that back really loaded up. Here's the video of it. He's got the hips starting to work open. They're already working open, and now he's allowing the upper body to get pulled through, to contact. So that's a really cool video because you can see the hips have already opened. The upper body's fighting, and then it gets pulled all the way through, and we're back to the beginning. So the big key takeaways here as we let this play through, we need to load the hip. Whether there's a negative move in the upper and lower body, the hip needs to load. The belt buckle needs to turn away from the pitcher. The upper body wants to load late so we can engage the scapula. The upper body wants to resist the initial hip turn to create that tension, to create the stretch, and then the upper body unloads. So if we think about teaching our younger hitters to load the hip by pushing the butt towards the pitcher, by pushing the belt buckle or turning the belt buckle towards the catcher, and then as we move forward with our lower body, do the negative move or the load with our upper body, resist the turn with our scap load, then let the hips pull the upper body through. We're going to get our hitters into much better hitting positions, and they're going to be able to control the swing and have a little bit more power. So think about that load being a two-step process, loading through the back heel, turning the belt buckle towards the catcher, showing the back pocket to the pitcher. As we pull the upper body back, we show our back numbers to the pitcher. We let the belt buckle lead the swing up and over the pitcher's head, resisting it with the upper body, the back scapula, and then we allow the bat to turn through the zone.